Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is a one-on-one interview and I'm joined by sports writer and Manchester United fan Sam Pilger. First of all, Sam, how are you doing after that explosive and fantastic end to the season?
I'm doing well. I can't believe the season had a happy ending to it. Having been at Selhurst Park, to the fact that we'd all be finishing the season with smiles on our faces, I didn't predict that. But yeah, it's wonderful. I think it's a slight state of shock. I think I was, after the second goal went in, thinking, we've actually got to win this now. We can't just have a plucky display. We've got to win it. And we did. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
It was fantastic. Imagine a Coventry-style crumble at the end of that would have been absolutely horrendous. We're going to be talking about Ten Hag, of course. We're going to look at transfers as well, potential targets for the summer, what exactly is going on with INEOS. They're coming in, they're upsetting everyone, they're offering redundancies, all sorts is going on. We'll get into all of that. But let's start with the manager, because you wrote about Erik Ten Hag earlier this week after the Cup final, and sort of to kind of show the entire... The sort of news cycle around Ten Hag at the minute. That was the last thing you tweeted about, that you wrote about United. What's going on? It feels like it's gone, they're going to do this review, and then 5 days later, we haven't heard anything. We don't know. Is he staying? Is he going? Like, where are we up to with Erik Ten Hag?
I thought, do you know what? I thought that today. I thought it's Thursday. Nothing's happened yet.
Yeah.
They're still deciding. I think we can take it as without a doubt. If United left on Saturday, he'd be gone. I don't know if there'd be a new manager appointed already, but if Ten Hag had lost on Saturday, he'd be gone by now. The fact that he won, but not just, it was how he won. It wasn't just, holding on and them having 20 shots. It was the tactics, it was the performance, it was Garnacho and Manu, two players he is blooded and believed in, the hugs at the end, the camaraderie with them. It's probably United's most impressive performance of the season, and probably their best team goal of the season. Plenty of good individual goals, but that second Manu goal. So it was the nature of it. I think the difference, obviously, we've been here before. 8 years ago, United won the FA Cup, and an underperforming Dutch manager was sacked in Louis van Gaal. The difference there was, it was for Jose Mourinho. So nobody questioned that. Well, very few people did. It felt a bit harsh, but it was like, that's an upgrade. That's an upgrade. That's Mourinho, who'd won the Premier League, the season before. No, 2 seasons before. And it was Jose Mourinho, which kind of should have happened in 2013. We thought, well, we've rectified a mistake. Thanks for your service, Van Gaal. We've got Mourinho. This time, there's no excitement about any of the replacements. So it's kind of like, oh, hang on. Do we really want to get rid of a guy who's able to outperform Manchester City, the best team in the world, in a cup final, in a one-off game? And it kind of blurred all the misery, all the dreadful performances that's come before it. So they're in a really difficult position, because I've been surprised that, fan polls are 85%, he must stay. I was thinking, have we all forgotten the season? It was dreadful. It was miserable. But you beat City in an FA Cup final with that sort of performance. It gives you pause for thought. It has done with INEOS, and here we are. I don't know whether he'll be kept or not. I think the fact is they don't want to look like they're just deciding on one game, but he would have been gone if they lost. There's no doubt about that. So yeah, it's a huge decision, and they're taking their time. It is such a momentous decision. Yeah.
How do you think this sort of makes INEOS look and makes Ten Hag look, where they're taking all this time with the decision? Obviously, they're talking about this post-season review like they haven't had all season to come up with most of this. Presumably, the only factor that they're now adding in is the FA Cup final. Like you said there, you think he would have gone, or he would have gone if we'd have lost that game. But how... at what point does it start to look like INEOS are desperate and sort of scrambling behind the scenes, where not only are they looking indecisive a little bit, but it's clear that they're trying to find a way to sort of navigate through a guy that, if they really loved him, would have given him a vote of confidence already. Yeah. They may have even offered him a contract extension. And if they really hated him, then surely they would have sacked him. They're looking Do you think they're worried about their own image on this? Because it is starting to look a little bit like, right, come on then, make a decision. You're meant to be these, no nonsense. Everyone's working from the office now. Decision. And then the big one's looming over them and they can't make their minds up. It doesn't look great, does it really?
It doesn't. And it's the biggest decision of all. And it's the one they're going to be judged on the most. No one cares working from home. Well, I'm sure you do if you're a United staff member. This is the one, technical director, CEO. That's all great, and we're delighted there's going to be a new structure, and there's people doing these jobs that weren't there before. But they'll be judged on this more than anything, results, of course. And so, I think they don't want the Ten Hag that finished bottom of the Champions League group, finished 8th, was stubborn and played some dreadful football. They want the Ten Hag from the first season, who finished 3rd, who was able to beat City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Barcelona over 2 legs. And the one that, despite everything, turned up in the cup final. I think if they could have that Ten Hag, but he's just turned up right at the end, and it's just like so they're really confused. I think they're confused. I think we're confused as fans. I mean, I think you're right. I'm confused. I'm torn of what I think. And I think the fan base is torn, and they're meant to be ruthless business people, but I think they're torn. I think they had this thing ready to go, and they're like, hang on. We've got a manager who went toe to toe with Pep Guardiola and won the cup final. Do we really want to get rid of him? So I think you are right. The season review. Hang on. Well, the season review only had one more game to add to it. There's a lot there. I felt he was a dead man walking after the Liverpool 4-3 game, because that was the turning point and there was no momentum at all. I thought, wow, what a gift. 4-3. United should have lost that game at Old Trafford. The Ahmad last-minute winner. And yet, after that, the results were appalling, dreadful. And I thought, well, that's it. He sucked the life out of winning an FA Cup semi-final, against Coventry. I was as a fan, I was like, I had such mixed emotions. I was like, we're in the cup final, but like, we just stumbled over the line. And I thought, that's it. I did tweet after that game. I said, that's it. I can't see him continuing. It's over. Even though United got to the cup final. And that wasn't my opinion, thinking he will be. So I just couldn't see a thing. I thought they were lined up. But I also think the thing is as well, clearly they have been speaking to agents and other managers. And I think, as well as Ten Hag salvaging something in the cup final, can they not have been overly impressed with who they've spoken to? Because I know you've spoken about it, and I've there's nobody. As I said, Mourinho in 2016 was exciting. There's nobody that excites whatsoever. No. And I think they have certainly spoken to them. And has anybody really impressed them? Really stolen their heart? It would appear not. And so they're in this really strange position where they're stuck. They're not sure what they got to do. I mean, they have to move soon, because, when you sign players, okay, you're signing for Manchester United, but you want to know who's the manager going to be next season. So, they are torn, and they want to take their time, get away from the emotion of the cup final and really study it. But it'll have to happen soon.
It has to. And I think the longer it goes on, the more they are sort of admitting just by their actions that they don't love any of the options available to them, which could completely undermine whether it's De Zerbi or Ten Hag or Tuchel or whoever it is next season managing Man United. This whole notion that clearly the owners weren't massively in love with any of these options, that trickles down to the players, and especially when we've seen over the years, at times, certain players not looking like they can be bothered, not looking like they want to run or to put their full effort in. If you've got a player who's going, the owners don't even like this guy, all I have to do is sack it off for 2 months and he'll probably sack him. That's not a good message to send to the players either, is it? So I almost think if they do keep Ten Hag, that they probably will have to give him maybe even a contract extension, because otherwise you basically Ralph Ragnicking him, if I can turn that into a verb, where the players know he's essentially a supply teacher who's going at the end of the year anyway. Do you think that's a thing that's playing on the owner's mind? Like, if we keep Ten Hag, we can't really have him managing United in the last year of his contract, because it looks like we don't like him. Do you think they're considering that as well?
Well, I think the difficulty is if United start badly. I mean, Solskjaer went in November, Mourinho went in December.
Yeah.
You know, Ten Hag, then there'll be no excuse, there'll be no debate. He's had a dreadful season. Okay, finished with the FA Cup, and then come the autumn or early winter, if he started badly again, they'll have no option, and then we're back to square one. A caretaker, an interim. That's dreadful. So I feel like they absolutely want to get it right. My feeling was, a new technical director, a new sporting director, a new CEO. It was inevitable there's going to be a new manager as well, their own man, a fresh new era. And Ten Hag was not helping himself, and then he pulls this cup final out. And anything involves a risk. I think this is what they've come to realize. Anything involves a risk. Of course it does. There are no guarantees in football, very few. And the managerial market is ridiculous. But anything involves a risk. Keeping Ten Hag, huge risk, because you're keeping a man who over 38 games finished eighth. I mean, that's a
horrendous.
Yeah. And I think what was interesting, I think Ten Hag was lucky because after the Brighton game, which was a bit of a dead rubber, and finishing eighth with a minus goal difference, I thought there wasn't much backlash against him. And then I suddenly realized, it's cup final week. There's a cup final to play. Everybody was quite supportive. And I've got to be honest, I think United fans would be far more supportive of Ten Hag than he deserves, or that I realised. And I sort of think, seeing the fans, they got a lot of praise at Selhurst Park. And I feel that was smart because they didn't turn, and the players appreciated that. And they repaid the fans at Wembley,
Yeah.
Those scenes at Selhurst Park where they all stood there shuffling about, a bit embarrassed, and United fans just sang their names and gave them a rousing applause. People were scratching their heads and going, what's this? People outside the United fan base. Oh, they don't deserve that. But I think the thing is, you stick together. They repaid them. And the hope is, I think people are bored and tired of change. Oh, another new manager. Here we go again. Yeah. We don't want to. Let's just stick with him. Let's just stick and see. But, I feel that INEOS want the Ten Hag of the cup final or the Ten Hag of the first season, and the one, they don't want the one of the second season, clearly.
Yeah.
But you're looking at appointing people, De Zerbi, Frank, who finished lower. Okay, it's with small clubs, with less budgets, with less expectations, but finished lower. Pochettino, when he stepped down in Chelsea, people were like, it's a perfect marriage. This should have happened. Pochettino was last a really great manager 5 years ago at Tottenham. 5 years ago. PSG, it's a bit nothing. You don't achieve anything there really. Chelsea finished sixth. Tuchel, I thought, is he going to get to Champions League, win the Champions League? He's a bit of a divisive character. Southgate is laughable. A manager who won't be able to start until July the 15th, who has no Premier League experience. Everything's a risk, and they know that everything's a risk. There's no Ancelotti, there's no prime Klopp, prime Guardiola. There's no manager that just will soothe the fan base. Whoever United go into the season with is going to have huge questions, whether it's Ten Hag or a new manager.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of starting the new season, then let's move and look a little bit towards transfers, because obviously the manager's put in a tricky position in terms of his targets, I'm sure, with not knowing whether he's going to be here next season. All the reports seem to suggest that we're going in a slightly different direction, less of Ten Hag's former players or, Dutch compatriots, and more down this angle of who is the best young player in the country or in the world that we can get for a fee that suits the club. In terms of target positions, first of all, as far as you understand, where do you think United are looking to strengthen in the summer?
I think, without a doubt, central defence. That was the case even before Varane left. With Varane's injury record, they were looking at centre-halves, possibly two. If you think that Maguire and Lindelof are Maguire's had a good season. Lindelof, they need to refresh that area, certainly.
Yeah, they do.
Central midfield, I think I'm pretty certain Casemiro will leave. He's on huge wages. The hope from United, and they've been teeing this up since the start of the year, had meetings. is for Saudi Arabia. That's the only place that can match his wages. I think Casemiro will leave. He wasn't starting the cup final anyway, so I think he probably wants to leave. And then Amrabat as well. I mean, again, it's almost like Ten Hag. Has he saved himself with that cup final performance, which was very good?
3 good performances all season, and all of a sudden, most people want him to stay. And I sort of put myself in that, especially with the fee that we would probably have to pay for him. But yeah, it's a bizarre situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I think certainly. I think a holding midfielder for partner for Kobbie Mainoo. Mainoo came in. We thought he was a defensive midfielder. Clearly not. We've seen he's got an attacking edge to his game. I think there needs to be, a fit younger Casemiro is what United will look for. So central defense, central midfield, and then it's a spine, isn't it? And there's a spine. I mean, looking back, I was vocal about it throughout the season. I mean, Højlund has ended well, but that was madness, absolute madness going into the season with an unproven kid from Danish kid from the Italian league with no Premier League experience. It's turned out as it was, really. 16 goals is a decent return for your first season, but that's what the leading scorer in the team that finished 8th. Their leading scorer scores 16 goals. I know Harry Kane goes to Bayern Munich and scores 40 plus goals. United sign Kane instead of Højlund, and United are finishing third, second, third. So that was a mistake. I know there was other factors to it, but to go into the season with just Højlund as your striker and an injury-prone Martial, which proved was a disaster. United finished the season with minus goal difference, which is barely believable. So I think that's an interesting one as well, because Højlund was a success, I think, overall. So, how do you pitch that to someone you want to bring in? You're going to play with him. You're going to be his backup. Do we go someone experienced? It's a difficult one to play that. So I think the spine, a central defender, central midfielder, and an orthodox striker, a number 9, will be the priority. I think it's interesting at left back. Malacia's obviously didn't play the season. Shaw's injury prone. I think they'd be interested in left back if they could. Dallow's obviously been very good. I mean, there was interest in Frimpong by Leverkusen. I mean, he could play further forward, but he's a right back. I think, it's a fascinating summer because, there were those reports of saying everyone's up for sale except for, 3 young players. And actually, if you look at everybody, again, we talk about Amrabat and Ten Hag, Wan-Bissaka. I mean, fantastic. Him at Wembley, Carabao Cup final, arguably United's man of the match. Some people had him down as United's man of the match. Yeah. In this final as well. But, is he a Premier League title winning right back? Probably not. So, I know there's interest from Inter Milan and going back to Crystal Palace even, West Ham. So yeah, I mean, you throw out a name. There's very few that are certain. So there's a huge amount of churn.
In terms of people coming in specifically, then Jared Branthwaite's been one that's been mentioned a lot from Everton. Reports, sort of varying reports, anywhere from they want 80 million from him and we want to pay 40 to they want 60 and we want to pay 50. Do you see that as a possible option? Is that someone that INEOS like, as far as you're aware?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that they do like him. There is interest there, but I think the fee is going to be huge. I mean, Everton don't want to be made mugs of. 40 million, it's unlikely, isn't it, really? If you think, okay, it's not the level of Harry Maguire was when United played 80 million 5 years ago. He just played in a World Cup. But, Everton sold John Stones to City for 55 million. So it'd be a big fee. And I don't know if United want to, go that far out on somebody who is a risk, who is unproven. So they do like him. But I think the thing is, Varane and Martinez worked. You're losing a lot of experience with Varane. I understand why he had to go. He's so injury prone. But to go Martinez, who's reasonably experienced, 26, and a young centre half, I don't know. I mean, I think there is interest as well, but I've got to be honest. I haven't been overly impressed. I think he's a good player, but 60, 70 million, I think you want a bit more of a guarantee. I should say, I mean, there is definitely interest in Michael Olise. If you look at United sort of wide players, Sancho won't be playing for United next season, almost certainly. Greenwood won't be either, and Anthony's been an unmitigated disaster, frankly. So I think there's opportunities there for Ahmad, and obviously Garnacho and Rashford. But I do think there is space for another wide player.
Yeah.
And Olise obviously has lots of fans. Chelsea had a bid for him last year. He signed a new contract. The new contract, as I understand it, has a release clause, I think of around 60 million. But I think that's a bit more complicated. I think that might be for a Champions League team. Obviously, United are not that. So there's some doubts there. I think Olise, as I understand it, there's interest. Why wouldn't there be? As disastrous a season as United have had. Things are going well there with Glasner, and Palace finished the season as United were the victims of in brilliant form. So there's definite interest in him. We'll have to see. But again, that's 60 million. So I think a lot will be influenced by sales. Sancho, clubs saying, "Oh yeah, another loan." Well, that doesn't help United. United need cash in the bank. Greenwood. One of McTominay and Maguire possibly. You're looking there, 3 players that could raise 100 million. So a lot will depend on sales.
It's interesting, isn't it? Everyone feels like you sort of said there, that Wan-Bissaka, there'd be weeks and months where you go by, we go, yeah, he's got to go in the summer. He's not quite at that level. And then he, does as good a job with Doku as I've seen anyone do this season. I know he got the goal, Doku, but it was every time City got the ball in that second half, they just gave it to Doku. And mostly, Wan-Bissaka stopped him getting the ball in the box. And I thought, you go, okay, brilliant, right? There's a player there. And then, this, like you said, Amrabat, most of the season, is left back. He's not fit enough. He dawdles on the ball. He's just pocketed Rodri. Like, how, we're giving these players such a load of stick, and then you see them at their best. And you think, if we can see these guys at their best, Ten Hag, if we can see him at his best tactically, at his best, Rashford, like the whole squad is filled with players who we don't know if they're good enough, but at their best, they're great. And it just, it's such a tricky thing for INEOS to come in and analyse, isn't it? Hopefully they can see the numbers behind things. They know a little bit more about the personal reasons why things may have happened the way they have. And they can make more informed decisions than us. But looking from a fan's perspective, like you said, you could go through most of the squad and find a decent reason why this player should probably move on now. Speaking of INEOS then, we've seen a lot in the last couple of months, basically, since they came in, where there's been one thing or another where, we're not going to pay for the staff to get down to Wembley for the cup final. You've got to make your own way there. We're cutting costs there. We don't want staff working remotely anymore. There's going to be, everyone's working from the office again. The most recent one that we saw was staff being offered redundancies. And they can, take redundancies to cut back on costs. Even little things like Speed, the Twitch streamer, being allowed in the post-match party for the FA Cup final. Some staff were annoyed at that. There seems to be a little bit of INEOS versus Manchester United staff battle going on at the moment. What do you make of that, and what do you know about what's going on there?
I mean, there will be. This is not a surprise at all, and I think wiser people realise that INEOS might be seen as the saviours, but they're ruthless as well. So Jim Ratcliffe runs a billion, multi-billion pound empire. He didn't get that by being cosy and sweet and a teddy bear to people. He wants to strip back costs, make things run better. I mean, it's interesting, the work from home thing, because we've all had that, and that's almost feels a bit outdated. From his age. I mean, Jim, he's in his late 60s, isn't he? And that feels a bit like, no, the world has changed. It's like, everyone back to the office. And we looked at data, and there's 20% less emails on a Friday and so on. But I don't think that's the smartest move. But yeah, in terms of redundancies and they're looking at the bottom line. They are looking at the bottom line. They want success. They want to win trophies, but they also want to, strip back and save as much money as possible. And if that, unfortunately, it's a ruthless businessman. He's not going to he's not going to worry too much if someone's been there for 20 years and doesn't want to come in and or doesn't want to come in on a Friday. And with Speed, yeah, I mean, again, it might have annoyed people. I sort of sighed seeing the pictures, but as I understand it, he was a personal guest of Garnacho, so he had every right to be there. As much as if Christian Eriksen invited his auntie and his cousin, if that's Garnacho is a friend, Speed is a friend of Garnacho, then he had a right to be there. Yeah, I'm a bit older, so I felt the pictures were a bit cringe and so on. But my kids have quite liked him, and I think they thought that was interesting. Yeah, I think at first there was a sort of backlash of like, what United doing? Is this some PR move, getting a YouTuber in there, Speed and so on? No, he was a personal guest of Garnacho, so there you go. It's just one of those things.
Yeah. Just on the sort of INEOS thing, like you said, the work from home thing seems to me more like a statement of we're doing things differently. They want everyone at the club, not just the players, not just the manager, but they want the staff members to realise something has changed here. Like, it's not just business as usual. It's not just, we're sorting out the squad and everyone else can just act like we're still working under the Glazers. I feel like that was like a statement of everyone has felt the effect of INEOS arriving. You're back in the office. Things have changed. Do you think that almost more from a psychological perspective, they're trying to give the feeling of a weight has changed? There's an impact to them arriving. Do you think that could be part of it as well?
I think so. I think that, obviously when the deal was done for what was initially 27.7%, it was meant to be the football department, football affairs.
Yeah.
Well, if you work in the commercial department or the, it's Manchester United, so everything's related to football, but it was felt to be the manager, the squad. We're going to franchise out the success of the football department. But if you work the department, why does INEOS care whether you work from home on a Friday or something? I feel like it's trying to drag everybody along. But the world has changed, and I think you've got to do that with more thought and delicacy. And maybe they're not doing that, but that's the case. He's invested billions into United already. These are his decisions, and while some people might not like them, I suppose we'll judge them in a year or two's time if United are leaner and meaner and doing better on the pitch.
Definitely. Right, Sam, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for coming on and letting us know what's going to go on in the summer. We're still waiting on This is the one in it. This is the killer. When will we know the future of Erik ten Hag? We will have to wait and see. Unfortunately, as a United fan yourself, you're just as desperate to know that as the rest of us. But thank you again for coming on and joining us. And hopefully we'll get you on very, very soon as well.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much. Right, hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This has been a one-on-one interview with sports journalist Sam Pilger. We'll see you in a bit.